Working with providers and drives. Now in this nugget, we're going to dive into one of the things that a lot of people ignore about Windows PowerShell, but ignore them at your peril because there's a lot of products out there, I'm thinking IIS, SQL Server, stuff like that, that really depend on these providers and drives to do their job and to let you get in as an administrator. So we're going to cover these things in quite a bit of depth. So we've got a lot to get through. I'm going to start by talking about what PSProviders and PSDrives really are. And I'll talk a little bit about how you find these things. The discoverability for these is not as good as it is for commandlets, so we'll get through that. But then we'll dive in and start using them. I'll show you how to map a new drive, how to navigate a drive once you have it mapped, and what a drive contains are items and item properties. So I'm going to show you how to work with all those things as well. And then just to make sure that you know why I'm showing you all this, along the way, we'll talk about some of the technologies that actually require you to use these providers and drives as part of their basic management strategy. PowerShell version 2, running on Windows 7. Let's get that up and running. Make sure I'm administrator, good. So one of the neat things that I think the PowerShell team did is they defined all those aliases that you saw in the previous nugget that are kind of mapped to the old DOS commands, right? I can cd to program files. I can get a directory listing. These aren't the same commands. You know that now. They're aliases. Their command syntax is a little bit different, but at least by having those aliases there, it makes it easy to get to. Now what I like is I could probably quiz you right now. And you know what? In fact, let's do that. What's the command? Say it out loud. What's the command to delete a file? It would be del, D-E-L, or in Unix, RM, and either of those will work in PowerShell. We've seen cd. What would be the command to make a directory? Make dir. What about removing a directory? In DOS, it would have been remdir. You would still use rm in Unix. What about displaying the contents of a text file? I don't know if I have any text files on this computer. We could certainly make one, but it would be, in DOS, it was type, and then in Unix, it was cat. All those commands still work. And what's interesting to me is that you probably knew those right off the top of your head, which means you've memorized an arbitrary set of command names that are used to manage a hierarchical database. I mean, I know the file system isn't a fancy database, but it does store data, and it is hierarchy, right? There's folders which have subfolders which have subfolders. Well, there's a lot of other hierarchical databases in Windows. And what's always bugged me is that if you wanted to manipulate any of those from the command line, where you could automate it, you had to learn an entirely different set of commands. Why can't I just cd hkcu to get to the registry, and then run dir to get a listing of keys, and cd software to get to the software key, and then run ls to, well, as you can see, in Windows PowerShell you can. You can run del star dash recursion. No, just kidding. That would be bad. Let's change back to the C drive, and I'll show you why. All this happens because PowerShell has a system of PS PowerShell providers. These guys act as adapters that make some form of storage look to PowerShell like a disk drive. Now, we've got the variable drive down here where PowerShell keeps its variables, but we've also got the registry provider, which allows PowerShell to attach to the registry. We've got the file system, which makes all kinds of sense. We've got this WSMan thing, the certificate store, environment variables. All of these different types of storage can be attached to. And you'll notice this is also saying I've got some drives mapped for these. For the file system provider, I've got C, A, and D. So my A drive, which is probably the virtual machine's floppy drive. Isn't it funny how only virtual machines have floppy drives now? My C drive, my local hard drive. D, probably my optical drive. My registry provider is mapped to two drives, HKLM and HKCU. Another way to see those is get PS drive. So these are all the drives that are actually listed. And if you know that PS drive is the noun, you can look and see that there's new PS drive and remove PS drive. And I'll bet you those are used to map new drives. New PS drive, name, win. And they get names, not letters, so they can have more than one. And let's say that this is going to come from the PSProvider file system, because that's the type of drive I want to map. And the root here is going to be my Windows folder. So now I can cd win, and I'm in my Windows folder. Obviously, I could have mapped that to a UNC as well if I wanted to map a network drive. Keep in mind, these are PS drives. Any of these that you map only appear inside this Windows PowerShell session. They will not appear in Windows Explorer. So let's get back to the C drive. The commands that are used to work with these drives typically use the noun, item, or item property. So these are all the ones you get. And you've already seen get child item, as a matter of fact, which is another one. So let's look at that one. Help get child item. We'll look at some of the capabilities here. Look, it can filter. It can do recursion. If you look at the new PS drive, you'll notice that this supports the use of credentials. If you look at one of the, well, actually get child item does too. Let me flip back up to that one. This can use transactions. It's important to remember that the command itself has no idea in advance what type of storage system you're going to attach to. And so it provides all of the parameters that you could possibly ever need in any situation. But not every kind of storage supports every kind of capability. If we look at this PS provider list, we get different capabilities. The WS-Man provider is the only one that supports the use of alternate credentials. The file system is the only one that lets you use that -filter parameter. The registry is the only one that lets you use the -use transaction parameter. So just because the command has the capability does not mean the underlying data store shares that capability. And you are limited when you run these commands to the capabilities of the data store that you're talking to. For example, dir, which is get child item, path, C, Windows, recurs, filter, show me everything with a DLL. And it's going to run through and do that. Now let's try this again. Let's go to I'll just do it from here. Dir, path, I'm going to be nice, I'm going to type all the parameter names, HKCU, software, recurs, filter, let's just find everything that says, I don't know, Windows in it. WAP can't. The provider, the registry provider, does not support the use of filters. So that's the type of error you get when you attempt to use a capability on a storage system that does not have that capability. It's really important to remember those. And here's a little trick that not a lot of people realize. When you run get PS provider and you have these provider names, you can ask for help on the provider name. Now there's some bad news about discoverability. There's no way for you to tell what providers are installed on your system. The ones you're looking at in this list are just the ones PowerShell loads by itself by default. I have no idea and no way to find what else might be installed. When you load additional modules, whoa, where'd my cursor go? When you load additional modules, it is entirely possible that they are going to add more providers to the shell, but you won't know until you install them. I can tell you a few. IIS, its web administration module, uses a provider. In fact, the provider is how you actually manage IIS. You don't run commands. Active Directory uses a provider, as does SQL Server. And there are others, but you can't really discover these. However, once you find them loaded, and so just as a quick hint, after I load a module of any kind, I always run get PS provider just to see if that module added a new provider. Unless you look, you'll never know. But once it's in here, you can try asking for help on the provider name. And if help is available, then you'll get a description of what the provider does, a list of drives that are currently mapped by this provider, a description, a list of its capabilities, we're down here now, and then a bunch of examples on how to use this thing. This is really awesome. I mean, look at this. There had to be 30 examples in there. Lots of good information. You can also read more about providers by asking for help about providers. And this will display everything. It describes all the built-in providers and everything else. So all that's good information. Now we need to spend a little bit of time learning how to work with these things. So if I look at a directory listing, what I'm looking at are items. Now in the file system, an item can either be a folder or it can be a file. In the registry, An item might be a key, or it might be one of these folders. Let's go find one. Let's see. I think I have a file in my documents folder. That means I should be able to cd $home. That's going to take me right to my home folder. From there, I can cd documents, and I do. So I have an item called test.txt, and it's got several different item properties, including its last write time, its length, and its mode. Now, some of these are read-only. Like I can't just go change the length. The length is calculated based on the length of the file. But there's other stuff in here too. Let's do get item property path test.txt. You'll notice it's the same default output, and that's because really when you run get child item, it's just getting the item properties for you. So this was kind of already happening. I'll show you a little trick here. That select star is going to let me see all of them. So what have I got here? Directory, creation time, attributes, archive, mode, length, base name, is read only. Oh, that's a fun one to play with. You know what? Let's do this. Set item property, path test.txt. The property name is read only. And then the new value is going to be $true. PowerShell uses $true and $false to represent the Boolean values. Now, just for fun, let's go into my documents folder and look at the properties of this. And that's not what I wanted. I wanted the file. Look, read only. It's checked now. So if we do that same command again to pull down all the properties, there it is read only is true. And so that's how you would change an item property. Let's go do the same thing in the registry, because the registry is a little trickier, and frankly I don't do it that often, and it always messes me up. So you'll get to see me make mistakes, and that'll be fun. Let's go to HKCU. Let's go to Microsoft. Windows. Current version. I'm just looking for something interesting. Explorer. Okay, Explorer has several things here. This is starting to look good. Let's go under CD Advanced. I'm probably going to mess up my entire machine. All right, so there's nothing in here. That means Advanced is an item, and you can actually see this if you look at the top of this list. Advanced is an item. It's not really a folder. It's more like a file. It has these properties. Now, there's not a great default output for these, but it means once you change into Advanced, you can't really do anything with it. So what I'm going to do instead is get item property for the path Advanced, and that's going to show me all of these different things. Hide file ooh, you know what? This is perfect. I hate hiding the file extensions. Set item property, path Advanced, name, where was it? Hide file extension, value. I'm guessing if 1 means hide, 0 means don't hide. So let's get that list again. There, I changed it. Hide file extension is now 0. And I just wonder if I go into documents. Yeah, so I probably have to kill the Explorer process and restart it so that it will reread that setting. Or log off and log back in. That'll probably do it too. But that's how you work with these things. That's how you change them. And the registry is a little difficult only because when you're looking at these things, sometimes it can be a little hard to tell which one is a folder that you can legitimately change into. But you can always look at this property because sometimes it's both. I think we probably saw some of those, right? Like I just changed into Explorer, but it has properties of its own. So I can do an ls of Explorer and I see the sub keys, but if I do a get item property for Explorer, it's got properties as well. Explore or startup, trace, recorded, shell, state, and clean shutdown. So an item in the registry can have properties as well as child items, which can have their own properties and child items. It does make it a little bit confusing, but you know, if you kind of remember that that's the way it is, then it's a little bit easier. I'm going to change to my C drive before I break something. In fact, I think it's time to move on. I've got just a couple of things to show you in the next version. So So PowerShell version 3 doesn't really do anything different with these providers. It's just that this Windows 8 computer is where I happen to have the Active Directory module installed. So let's load that, import module, Active Directory. And I want to do this because I know the Active Directory module has a PS provider. So get PS provider. There it is at the end, Active Directory, and that means I have an AD drive. Now the trick here, you're not really meant to necessarily go spelunking around in here and deleting all of your users as if they were files. That's not entirely the point of this. The point of it is that this Active Directory provider supports credentials. Now that means you can map a drive to another domain where you have to provide an alternate set of credentials to do so. When you run any of the Active Directory commands, they default to the connection and the credentials of whatever drive you're currently in. So if you map a drive to another domain and you want to run commands against that domain, you just change to that domain's drive and start running your commands. You don't have to specify a separate credential for every single one of them because the drive is remembering it. And that's just an approach the Active Directory team took. The System Center Configuration Manager team took a similar approach. They have a provider, and it has to be mapped to your site, and you have to run all the commands from that drive because that's how they know what site to connect to and what credentials to use. So every team takes a slightly different approach with these things, but I kind of wanted you to see this so you knew what it looked like and you could see one of these things being added. I'm not sure. Let's try asking for help on that provider. I'm not sure if I've updated help over here. I'm betting not because it's doing a full text search. Yeah. So either there's no help for that or I haven't pulled the help down, and that's okay. Sometimes you don't get help for individual providers, just kind of the way of the world. When you don't, it means you hop on Google or Bing and hope that somebody else has figured it out for you, and that's how you learn how to use those. So now you know what a PS provider and a PS drive is. You know that these are not the most discoverable things in there, but you do know that there are certain technologies that require to use them. So, you know, there's a reason to know this stuff, even though, frankly, I don't think it's as well put together as the commandlet side of things. But now you know how to map a new drive, you know how to navigate that drive, you know how to work with the items in that drive, and you know how to work with the properties of the items, the item properties in that drive. This is going to hopefully give you a good head start on this. Now, we're going to run across these things again, so always feel free to refer back to this nugget if you need a quick refresher on the syntax and some of the concepts. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.